we doing? Hi, you're very welcome, you're very welcome. Thanks so much for coming. It promises to be a brilliant evening. We're looking ahead to the All-Ireland hurling final. Galway people, are you here? Oh, bloody hell. Anyone from Limerick? Okay, brilliant. Tasty. I have, Daithí Regan, my co-host for the evening. Daithí Regan, everyone. Thanks so much for doing this. Yeah. No, I didn't want to do it alone. I didn't want to do it alone, so it's great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here.
This is where you get to ask the horrible questions I ask you every week.
I just said it Hollymore, and it's such a big difference, actually. Normally you're coming up and you're thinking, you know, what you're going to say and previewing the match, and then you get a call and you say, we want you to ask some questions. And Joe will take the lead, and I thought, if I start, Joe ain't going to get a word in here. So. But anyway, you lead and I'll follow anyway. But
okay, sounds good. So we've got a brilliant lineup. We're going to talk to Barney Rock. I presume there's dubs here as well. That's an acceptable amount of Dublin people, I think. I think we're all thrilled with that. Anyone from Tyrone? One person from Tyrone. Great. You're guaranteed a photo with Enda McGinley at the end, 100%. So we'll get to the lads in a couple of minutes. We are here, I mean, it's such a brilliant venue. We're streaming live if you're listening at home and want to have a look. We're at the Guinness Open Great Brewery, and we are here at this event with hurling football legends at the Open Great Brewery, with thanks to Guinness and their Bound Together campaign, which we've been working alongside over the last while. And the Bound Together campaign celebrates the power of the GAA to unite and heroes the fans and their passionate commitment and connection to their local communities. So it's lovely to be part of that and lovely to be here this evening. You can stream it in all the usual places. We've cameras here. So no gestures, Daithí, that'll come back to haunt you, please. Facebook Live, Periscope, Twitter, all the usual places. Will we get our first guests on? Galway people, Limerick people, they need no introduction. Ollie Moore and Pete Finnerty with us, everyone! Jesus, lads.
Right.
They are great T-shirts. Did you email beforehand, or is this an unfortunate mix-up?
I don't know. It's all part of the gig, I suppose. Drink sensibly and all the rest. So all good. All good.
So we are here on the Wednesday. Oof. We okay? We're okay. We're here the Wednesday before an All-Ireland hurling final. I can only presume, very difficult time in some ways for the players. I wanted to ask you about Limerick in particular. It was very noticeable. Me and Di even talked about it the Monday after the semi-final. So Shane Dowling on the pitch, they've just won a semi-final, and Dowling sort of saying, listen, leave the players alone kind of thing was the message. And then John Kiley in his post-match press conference, he came into the media, and before the press conference even started, he kind of said, just by the way, if you go near the players, I will shut this thing down. And I thought it was a very striking thing. What's the mood been like in Limerick?
Yeah, I suppose a lot has been made of it. I think within Limerick, there was actually very little made of that. I just think that was a manager using his prerogative and saying, okay, my role here is to protect the players. I suppose he was conscious that maybe in previous years there was a feeling outside of Limerick, and I suppose within Limerick that maybe Limerick were too accessible to maybe the media, too accessible to local business, and too accessible to the public, and that maybe had an impact on their subsequent performances. Look, again, we spoke to a good number of people there today, and when it comes to hype, nobody does hype better than Limerick. We are All-Ireland champions, world champions when it comes to hype. But
why is that, do you think?
I think, look, it's number one, Limerick is a passionate sporting county. It's well documented. Limerick's a big rugby city, but local soccer is big. GA is massive. Like, GA is in the lifeblood, and Limerick have won All-Ireland since 1940. That's 78 years. It's like any Mayo people in the audience, there's an absolute craving to win an All-Ireland, and there'll be such an outpouring of emotion and relief. Like, it's a long time. 45 years is a long time, but I just think it's natural. We're not getting to All-Ireland finals every year. This isn't something that we do all the time. So, look, I think it's only natural that there's going to be a heightened sense of anticipation or excitement. But, like, from what I can see, Joe, like, this time round, it's been very measured, it's been very well controlled, there's great excitement, there's great colour, but I think the team have been left to do their own thing. They're very focused on their own job as well in hand, and I think that's the way it should be. So I say fair play to John for making that call.
Because I was wondering, perhaps was it some reaction to what might have happened in '07? You were obviously around then. There was talk of like players were opening shops or doing appearances the week of the final. Was that sort of stuff going on?
Well, like again, I have personally.
What did you make? Is what I'm asking.
Yeah, what did I make? Talk to my accountant there. I'll just send you on some figures. No, look, I think we were actually very well insulated from it by and large. Like I can only speak personally, and I know that I just went into cave mode for the 2 or 3 weeks, just isolated myself. I remember I was carrying a knock, which was great because I was in and out of the physio. I was going down to the local stream, trying to sort out my injury. Sports science was a faraway thing at that stage. So it was the local stream was the rehab. But
sorry, what were you doing in the stream?
Well, the therapeutic effects, Joe. You've obviously never been injured. And has anyone ever told you about going down to spring water and the benefits of flowing water and cool water? The Shannon side. No, you're not.
Well,
you haven't had injuries, so.
What was injured?
So I'd injured my my ankle coming up to the match, whatever. So
just put the foot in the stream and
putting the foot in the stream, leave it there, sit there, and chill back and isolate yourself. So I was in hermit mode for about 2 or 3 weeks. But no, look. To be honest, I was quite happy. I stayed out of town. I was working in town at the time, so I stayed the hell away from it. In fairness, I think Richie Bennett and our management did a very good job of trying to hide people from it. Like, and I think, I just made the point to Dahi earlier on. I think an awful lot has been made of this whole hype thing in Limerick. I think people are fascinated with how you're dealing with hype. Like it's it's excitement, not hype. It's like the point I made. If Limerick win on Sunday, they'll have dealt with the hype. If they lose, you'll always hear, well, they couldn't deal with the hype. You know what I mean? So like it's it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
It's probably classic pre-match fodder for talking points like
Correct,
this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your memories are what was it like in Offaly or Galway?
Well, it was. It's no different really for anybody. I guess it can be different if it's your first All-Ireland final, or a guy who's playing his 7th or 8th All-Ireland final. I know Tommy Welch often speaks about each one individually brought its own pressures, but I think it's a different type of pressure when you're accustomed to playing in a regular basis. I think it's really unique when you play in your first, because it can have various effects on different guys, and everyone has a different personality, so. But I just think nowadays it's way different than it was before. But back in the day, I think you were expected just to man up. It's an All-Ireland final. But nowadays, there's a consciousness about the psyche of players, and it's only right. I think back in the day, Pete, you'd acknowledge this. You were expected to go out and hurl. You were prepared. You ate right. You did this, that, and the other. But now there's a lot more scientific approach to it. Like what interested me as well was looking at Galway now, going for 2 in a row. When you guys won your 2 in a row, and Babs Keaton considered you one of the greatest hurling teams of all time. But actually, if you look at where your team came from, which is really interesting, when you made the breakthrough in '85 in an All-Ireland semi-final, 10,000 people at an All-Ireland semi-final? 8,000. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Against Cork.
Yeah, against Cork in 1985. Excuse me. Cork were our All-Ireland champions. And we had a new team. Tony was on it, I was on it, Tony Kilkenny was wing back. Mike McGrath, Joe Cooney, we hadn't played before, and I remember the comment in Galway was, did you pick that hat out, or that team out of a hat? No one gave us really a chance. And there was 8,000 people huddled above in the Hogan stand. That was the only stand that was open, and it was teeming rain. I never saw Croke Park as wet in all its life. I remember we were talking beforehand in the hotel as to what our best plan was, and go out there and hurl like dogs, and do whatever you can. They're all Ireland champions. They're going to be good. The conditions will help us because favourites don't really like bad conditions. And we just got a run on them, and we got a few goals. And
a few. They got 5.
Did they get 5?
They got 5. Yeah. You guys got 4.
Was that it? Yeah.
5-5. They got 5-5 All Ireland champions.
Yeah.
They showed great steel from so many young guys. You were kids. You really were kids. A lot of you coming on.
That's all, but sometimes, and this would be a fear I'd have for Galway, sometimes kids have no fear.
Yeah.
And Limerick could come to Croke Park where they've been before playing minor, and they could come with no fear whatsoever. Like if you look at when most people win their All-Stars, they'll win them when they're kids. They won't be winning them when they're 23, 24 or 25. They'll be winning them when they're young, starting out, and that's because they have no fear. I'll be back here again, don't you know? They've no ambition about not performing well. I've done it before, and they've confidence. And there's a different psychic, as you said now, don't you know, to the approach. They all have their personal trainers and the psychologists inside, don't you know? And the day we'd be going out, and you alluded to today, like we'd be bringing the doors off the dressing room. We'd have broke 3 hurls on a table, and all we were doing was burning up energy inside in the dressing room. Now it's a totally controlled approach. They'll just jog out onto the field, they go into their training drill, and then away they go. Their 10 boys band and the national anthem. You know? But looking at Limerick's point of view, it's going to be difficult for every one of them to get that right, because you know you're first All-Ireland as well. It's a daunting experience, and you're always going to lose 1 or 2 in the cosmetics, as I call them. You know, like you go out there, 84,000 people roar at you. You're playing the All-Ireland champions. Their 10 boys band, you're standing there for the national anthem, and the hair is standing the back of your neck, like. And it is daunting. But then again, if they come out with the attitude they have, and I heard Tom Morrissey being interviewed after, I think it was the Kilkenny game, and Joanne Cantwell was saying to him, Tom, must be great to beat Kilkenny since 1973. And Tom says, well, we've beaten them at minor, we've beaten them at under 21, and we've now beaten them at senior. The old history is not ours. Whatever history we write, we'll write our own history. I thought it was an incredible answer from a young lad that was only 22 years of age. You know?
Maturity certainly seeming to be about this Limerick side. Eamon Cregan once said on an All-Ireland final day, you'll have 5 fellas who'll play above themselves. You'll have 5 fellas that'll play somewhat in between, and 5 fellas will play below. And it's often the 5 guys in the middle can decide. If I was to say to you with Limerick that there was a possibility of 5 guys who may not play up, would you have concerns that there's a few players there that maybe I would question?
Yeah, like I think that's the thing about being the challenger, and Limerick are the challenger. You know, it's like 2 heavyweights. You know, there's the defending champion, there's the challenger, and Limerick, look, are the challenger. And I think if Limerick are to win, and someone made a very good point, like we will need to have probably 10 guys that have 8 out of 10s or more, and of the 5, they'll need to have 7 out of 10s. Like we just will not. In order for us to beat Galway, I think we need to be 6 or 7 points better than on the day to win by a point or 2. You know, so everything needs to go our way. We need to try and negate the obvious strengths that Galway have, and you know, Galway have many. But performance-wise, like, and again, we talk about dealing with the hype, and you know, if you're in the Limerick. In the Limerick setup, and you know, I was there in 2007. You know, the one word of advice that I would have is go and control the controllables. You know, make sure your touch is good early doors. Get on the ball early. You know this yourself, Dahi and Pete. Get on the ball early. Get into the game. Try and win your battle. You know, like, and there's a lot of big matchups. There's a lot of big battles there, and I think we need to win at least 8 or 9 of those battles. And hope that we have 2 or 3 marquee performances, because every All-Ireland in history, it's been ultimately dictated by the 2 or 3 guys that step up to the plate with big performances. Just one thing that you know, Pete was talking about, the difference, and you alluded to yourself. I'm a firm believer that the one difference between now and back then is we had no headphones back then, Pete, and there was no playlists, and I think that's the secret to dealing with All-Irelands now. Get a big set of headphones and play playlists. Yeah, there could be nothing going on, but just it looks the part, and you look the part anyway. So maybe that's what we were missing in 2007. We didn't have the big earmuffs and the playlists going on. But
what's your strongest memory of 07? Because you were against that brilliant Kilkenny side. So
yeah, well, people look. Let no one tell you otherwise. To play in an Ireland final is the ultimate in every player's career. It's every kid, when they're pucking a ball against the wall, they dream of playing All-Ireland final. So like that in itself, like, it's a unique occasion. It's a massive occasion. I think you ask any of the players that played that day, both Limerick and Kilkenny, it was just a reaction coming out onto the field, Joe, was like nothing. You know, you take it to your grave with you. We had rehearsed it. We had the tape recorders in the Gaelic grounds for weeks coming up to the match. We came out onto the field, and it was like just being met with a wall of sound. You know, like Croke Park that day was just a cauldron of noise. We
Did it rattle you a little bit? You were experienced at that stage.
Yeah, but I'd never experienced being in an All-Ireland final. I had plenty of experience of being in kind of, theatres or amphitheatres like Páirc Uí Chaoimh and Thurles on Munster final days, and they were huge, but nothing could prepare you for coming out onto the field that day. Like there was, it's very hard to describe, but it definitely, like, just to give you an example, we had rehearsed. This is where you do the warm up. You had your 2 or 3 warm ups. Warm ups back then were pretty shorter than they are now. So we were all told, take a right when you come out onto Croke Park pitch. Take a right. Everything is set up for you. We rehearsed all this the weeks before, and half the team ended up going left. You know what I mean? So like,
wow.
And
don't even go, lads, we rehearsed this.
But you see, this is the thing. This is the thing. You needed to be there. It was the fact that my point is we were blown away. It's not that we'd forgotten where to go. We did become disoriented for those couple of minutes. And I remember going around the parade that day, the flares. It was carnival atmosphere. It was like something you'd see in Rio. You know what I mean? It was.
And was the warm? Do you remember anything about the warm up then, when the lads who turned left came back then?
Yeah, I know it's. You look back now, like that wasn't the reason why we didn't perform, actually we'd started off the first 7 or 8 minutes of that game. We were neck and neck with Kilkenny. The game started off pretty slow, and then Kilkenny do what Kilkenny do best. They just hit you with sucker punches. But like my point being, you asked about, what do I remember? Like I clearly remember just that wall of noise is the only way I could describe it, and how it definitely did disorient us. I spoke to some of the Kilkenny lads afterwards, and they said that in all the All-Ireland finals they played, they'd never experienced anything like that before. So that was interesting.
That was the Limerick fans, probably. Did you go left or right?
Well, left. Wrong. Doesn't say much from my sense of direction, but I obviously didn't read the memo, but yeah.
It's a mad story, isn't it? Absolutely incredible.
They stuck with Kilkenny for 7 minutes. You didn't do too bad, to be honest with you.
Well, considering Waterford the year after, I think we did quite well. People forget that. We were only beaten by, I think, 6 or 7 that year. So
they'll thank you for that. Pete, I played against you in a couple of All-Ireland semi-finals. And one of the things that struck me, and I've said this to many teams that have been involved with over the years, and I know the time of the year, again, it brings back a lot of memories and a lot of talk about Tony, and I had the displeasure of marking him in a couple of those All-Ireland semi-finals. But what struck me about you guys at that time in relation to Galway now, if you look at the fade-outs of Galway at the minute, and I was looking at some stats today, for the first 20 minutes, the last day against Clare, there were 75% success rate from shots. Pass completion, everything was perfect. And for the next 20 minutes, that dropped by 20%. Passes dropped by 20%. And I thought to myself when I knew you were coming on tonight, and I thought about you guys when we played, you wouldn't have allowed that happen. You wouldn't have allowed it dip because you were the most vocal players, your specific half-back line. You used to even clear a ball 70 yards down the field, and the whole tree you were driving yourselves on, but you were driving everyone else on. Is there a concern with this Galway team that when it goes, and if it goes after 20 minutes again, is there enough Jerry Macks, Pete and Tony Keady's to stand up, recognise when it's happened and say, nothing nor watch? Would that be a concern, or are you satisfied that the leaders are there?
It has to be a concern, of course, Dahi, because we have started brilliantly in most games this year, and then when we go the 9 points, the 11 points up, we seem to ease off and pull off. And even if you watch the replays of most of those games, early on against Clare, if you remember, the Clare goalkeeper hadn't a clue what he could do with the ball, because we had pushed up right on them. We gave them no space, we gave them no respect, we were in their face, we wouldn't let them play the short game that they like to play. And the next thing, we were 9 points up against them, and suddenly we pull off a bit. Goalkeepers pinning lads, the next thing they're running down the middle, and they're doing what Clare loves to do, coming running at us. I think we should have stayed pushed up, we should have kept the pressure on, and another 2 or 3 points, and you're nearly out of sight.
But does that beg a question then, that when a team changes it up during a game against Galway, that it takes Galway quite a bit of period of time to adjust to what's happening in front of them?
It does, and you probably have to question, is that the player's fault or is it management's fault? But and I know when you go on the field, players have to stand up as well. You have to stand up and be counted. And with all due respect to everybody who's playing for Galway, there are a few players playing well below par from last year. you know, and they have to come to the pulpit on Sunday, and they have to perform. They have to preach, as you say. They have to be vocal. They have to be in each other's ears. They have to be pushing each other on. We're 8 pints up, or 2 pints up, or wherever on. You say, get the next one, get the next score, get the next score. Don't you know? I remember, you're 100% right. We would never stop shouting. You'd be sick listening to us roaring. Would this lad ever shut up? And, you know, and you'd be driving Coleman on, Sylvie would be driving me on, I'd be driving Keely on, he'd be driving Mac, and that's the way we did it. And it kept you focused for the whole game. And if you ever watch a video of us in the All-Ireland finals, before the parade, we'd be shouting back to each other. We'd be roaring. Look across at him. He's useless. You'll destroy him, don't you know? And that's just a method
That's a fact.
Sledging.
That's just a method of keeping a fella focused. Because, as we said earlier on, you can lose a few fellas.
And Pete, did any of the other team ever shout back at you?
Maybe an odd one, like as a cheat to do it.
We were actually a bit young in '90 when we played G. You were at the peak of your powers. We were coming with a young side. But I remember in the Millennium that night, I was playing club hurling in Dublin, and I stayed in Dublin that night. I met some of the Galway players afterwards. And I was talking to Ollie Kilkenny, and we spoke, and I'd had a run-in with Tony that day, as I did over many times, but I was young, and I would have embraced playing against someone like Keedy, to be able to pitch yourself against him. And I met Ollie Kilkenny that night, and you were an amazing side, and he said to me, we knew at least 3 year forwards that we were going to get to, with verbals. So people accused these guys behind Enda and his team. I mean, that's rubbish. You had to have a great belief in yourself, and to be as vocal as that. Now, it wasn't an intimidating type of thing, but it was the least little thing that she did well. They used to drive everything on, and if you were losing and you were a younger player, you could become a bit intimidated by that. But I think, to be fair, we'd have respected you for it, like, you know, it's leadership.
You will, and you'll always respect a good player, you know what I mean? You go out there and you compete, and you know, you shake hands, you wish him the best, but you know he can destroy you as well, you know, and you're going to respect a good player, and you have to, and Galway would be very naive not to respect Limerick, because they have very, very good players. They have a very, very strong bench, you know, so every time you go out to an All-Ireland final, if you don't respect the man beside you, you know you want to beat him with the first ball, you want to beat him for the second ball, you're looking at him, you're saying to him, in your own mind, this is not your day, Dahi. I don't care. It's not your day. It's my day, Dahi. You can have the next one, but this is my one. And mentally, you're driving yourself on for the full 70, 80 minutes. And I know where you're coming from with this. Are our lads driving on for, we'll say, 20 minutes, and then the drive is not continuing? And you know, I know, everybody knows, whoever played in Croke Park, 25 minutes is not going to win in All-Ireland. You might get away with it with championship games, but we have to play for the full 70 minutes, because if we're up by 2 or 3 points, and the next thing they unload Dowling and the rest of that bench on top of us, you know, we're going to find it hard to control them. So if Galway don't start and play in the manner that we're talking, that's without sledging players. And so talking the manner we're talking has been focal, been in their face, been talking to each other, driving each other on, and play with the freedom and the ability they can, and the self-belief that All-Ireland champions should have,
Ollie,
and put them under pressure.
Sorry, Pete. Ollie, were verbals going on like that in your day 10 years ago? Was that
absolutely.
In the parade?
Not so much in the parade, but you know, Kilkenny didn't have to worry themselves about verbals, because they were just so good, and they were so even physically intimidating. Like, you know what I mean? Once actually, that's the one beauty of Kilkenny. Kilkenny never had to. Kilkenny were probably the most physical team you would ever meet, and they would, like, I often made the point that when you played Kilkenny, a ball could be coming in. They'd have you fouled 3 times before the ball would come completely under the radar, and that's the way they operate. Like, they were just clinical in how they went about their business. They didn't have to engage.
Yeah.
Like, look, famously, Waterford made that mistake 2008, tried to intimidate Kilkenny. They got beaten by 23 points. That was the end of intimidating Kilkenny, you know what I mean? So, like, you just, you know, they were a completely different team. But look, it happens. Yeah. I get the feeling, though, Joe, that that culture of kind of trying to intimidate the opposition isn't anything like as prevalent as what it was maybe even 10 years ago. You know, I think guys just go about their business now more.
Yeah, I saw this game described today as the best team, Galway, against the best squad. And so
Yeah.
that's the kind of melting pot we're in. How close do you see this one on Sunday? Like, who do you think's going to win?
Yeah, well, sure, naturally. Yeah, I'm only looking at it through green and white lens,
I know,
you know,
but
so
try and park the heart for a minute. Like, just analytically, like, who do you think is going to win?
okay, just put a bit of context on it, I suppose. Coming into the semi-finals and at the start of the year, Galway, I was just hugely impressed by Galway early last year. Not even during the league, they won the league, but I was hugely impressed with just their physical condition, the way they were playing. Galway were way more direct, and you know they won the All Ireland. Got their lucky breaks along the way too in the semi-final and the final, but they were the best team in the country.
Yeah.
This year they were 5 or 6 points better than every team in Ireland. I would say up to the semi-finals, I thought that they would deal with Clare. It was a good Clare team, but I thought they'd have too much for them. I think Clare asked serious questions of Galway that I didn't think that the frailties that they would appear maybe to have, they certainly wouldn't have been evident coming into those Clare games. So I'd go along with your contention. I think they certainly have the best team. They've arguably the 3 best hurlers in the country well, probably 4 if you like. You could throw in Dahi Burke, Padraig Mannion, Grode McInerney, like throw in Dahi Burke, Joe obviously is so like they have the marquee names that probably we don't quite have.
Yeah.
But I do think this Limerick team, their power basically is in the power of the squad and of the as one. When they all combine together, they've been very, very effective. Players that wouldn't be rated maybe outside Limerick, like Grode, Hegarty, Dan Morrissey, Richie English, like they've had fantastic years, but they're not on anyone's radar. But when you throw all those guys in together, they're hugely effective for Limerick. And as you made reference to as well, and a lot has been made of our squad. Like our squad, in Limerick this year has never ever been as strong in any generation. Go back 30, 40, 50 years, it's never been as strong. But not only have we a strong 26, there's probably another 5 or 6 knocking on the door that would be on any other panel. So we're very fortunate in Limerick in that we now have 30, 35 guys that are well good enough to play inter-county at this stage.
Just to stop you on that, I presume, by the way, you're still going to say Limerick.
Absolutely,
Okay. Yeah, I figured that.
Surprise, surprise.
On the squad situation, me and Dahi both read Colin Keys this morning, just independently of each other in the Independent, and he just had a piece on why Limerick have such a brilliant squad right now. And there's been a 5-year plan in Limerick. Well, you kind of hear about great work being done in the county, but so specifically there was a lifting the treaty was the name of the document. So a short version is this: in 2011, which was the end of the 5-year kind of cycle, 57% of primary school children in Limerick City are playing GAA. 57%. You go back 5 years earlier, it was 8%. So they've gone in there and done an unbelievable job. They had Jerry Wallace quoted in the piece, the director of the Hurling Academy when it started, and they 2 months of the summer they'll get them in twice a week, but otherwise it's just once a week on a Saturday at UL, and then they're with their clubs, and it's not all about winning under 16 All Irelands or minor All Irelands or anything like that. It's just about developing players. And hey presto, Dahi, like you were reading this today going, Jesus, is every other county watching?
Very interesting. Yeah, I read the article today, Ollie. I was in Borough having a bit of lunch, and I read the article, and I phoned Pat Cleary from Offaly, who will be involved with Offaly games, and I said, if you're not reading the paper, buy it, get it now. And we ended up in a 40-minute conversation, and the forensics that Limerick were going into, I thought there was 2 or 3 really important points. One, we're not looking to build winning teams now. We're looking to develop players. We're not looking to win minor. We're looking by the time they get to 21 that they're winners. And then when you dig a little bit deeper into it, they were making the point that Limerick would spend 6-week cycles on catching the ball, 6-week cycles on hooking, 6-week cycles on blocking. And I thought, they're preparing players that when they reach adulthood, they're going to have all the skills, not just how to tackle and grab a player, but complete rounded players. And I just thought straight there in that's a template for other counties to look at.
Well, look, I suppose the big thing there is strategy and forward thinking, and a lot was made in Limerick of the success of our under-21 teams back in the early noughties. We won 3 consecutive under-21 titles, but there was no follow-up. Now, those 3 All-Ireland under-21 winning teams were born out of a 5-year plan that had its origin maybe in the mid to late 90s. Okay, so we've been down this route before. Don't make the mistake of thinking that, okay, because we have now this academy structure and because we have this collective thinking that all of a sudden now we're in All Ireland finals, that's the way it's going to be. Okay, I would make the point the academy has been absolutely fantastic for Limerick from the point of view that we are we're bringing in the best players that the clubs are producing. At the end of the day, the academies aren't producing players, and like you know, it's the Patrick Swells, the Kilmallocks, the Ahans, the Napirshigs, that's the foundation. So like, if any county, I would say, don't think that this is the ready-made template that everyone can take. Clubs, you have to start from the base. The club is the base for everything. I suppose the beauty in Limerick is you then had the nursery schools. So like Ard Scull has been huge in terms of almost half the players have gone through the gates of Ard Scull Reach. They've played Harty Cup. They've gone on. Okay, well they haven't won All-Ireland colleges. They've been very successful. So and then the next step up is our third level. We've Mary I, Limerick IT, and we've UL. So all those players invariably have gone. So now we have a structure that hasn't been there before. Now, I suppose underlining all that has been the academy structures. They meet every Saturday. I know ourselves, we send in a load of players, and these guys are getting, they're getting the best of education on diet, preparation, mental approach. You mentioned there the skills of the game, practicing the basics, you know, all that. So now all of a sudden you're creating a framework, okay? You've got a framework, but you have got a lot of players coming through that framework. And like that's been the beauty in Limerick too. Now we have strength and depth, I suppose, that we didn't.
So does that mean every All-Ireland victory for every county has its own meaning? In Limerick, to win this All-Ireland final, as well as breaking that cycle since 1973, is it fundamentally critical then to keep this growth going, to keep this work going, and I guess to attract players who may otherwise be attracted to other sports? Is that as important an element for Limerick to win this All-Ireland?
Well, look, we spoke earlier on just about the rugby structures, and you know, within Limerick too, we hear about the academies and the Munster, you know, how they've been successful and how they've used the clubs and all that. Like, so we now have a ready-made template. Like, I think it'd be very foolish if we decide, okay, if we do win Sunday, we're lucky enough. Like, you can be sure that now you're giving credibility to all the work that's been done. And like, bear in mind, a lot of the architects of this has been, you know, the likes of Joe McKenna, you mentioned Jerry Wallace. There's really, really good people involved. The county board have backed it. So, look, I think you're going to see a lot more of it. Just to give you an example, within Limerick too, a lot of players that are good hurlers are invariably going to be good rugby players. They've been tempted to go down the rugby route. I know we'd spoken about it earlier on. A lot of my generation would have gone down that route. Now, if they can see here is a very, very strong structure, they buy into it, well organised, there's good people over it. So now every player now wants to aspire to go and play senior hurling with Limerick. You know?
You were a rugby player really until you got called in very late. So I mean, you're kind of perfect example. How do you see Sunday
He
going?
wouldn't be much good at rugby because he gets his left from his right. Now, you know, all your
Cheap shot out of you. That's the kind of verbals that you're throwing in the parade.
They're nice verbals.
Sorry, Joe, what do you say?
I'm saying, how do you see Sunday going?
How do I see it going? I see it. I totally respect Limerick, you know, and everything we've said here positive about them is positive. They have improved with every game. They only had one really poor game, and that was against Clare, and that was maybe as a result of too many consecutive games. Against Kilkenny, they showed absolutely great composure. When Kilkenny scored that goal, I said, oh no, here we go again. Kilkenny have it stolen on them. Against Cork, when you're 6 points down and only 6 minutes left, the composure that they had again, they never panicked, they never lost their way, they never went shooting from bad angles, they retained the ball until they got the man in the better position. And of course Dowling stepped up and he scored a classic goal. It'll be remembered for a long, long time. The negatives is as I go back again, it's their first All-Ireland final, and it's going to be difficult for them to get into the game. We are All-Ireland champions, and I don't care who are All-Ireland champions, you have to respect them. We haven't been beaten in 12 or 13 games. Okay, we struggled at times. We were 2 points down with 2 minutes to go in extra time, and I thought it was gone. We had 5 All-Stars sitting on the bench, and it was the younger fellas and the other less-known players that pulled it out of the fire for us that day, and we got the draw out of it. Our strength and conditioning, will probably help us under the high ball, but I really think we have to go for a lot more than the 25 minutes, and we have to push our advantage on that we are All-Ireland champions, and we're not there on merit, we're there because we earned it. And All-Ireland finals are earned, they're not given out, and you have to go up there and play for the full. Micheál is a shrewd man, you know, and he has made very few mistakes, and he will have a plan to keep us going for more than 25 minutes, to stay pushing on. He'll have a plan to start the game early and get into it early. He might go for Jonathan Glynn early with the high ball, but I think he'll pin the ball up along like he did. And that, funny enough, is when we nearly got more scores than hitting the high ball into John. I know he's very dangerous inside on the edge of the square. It'll be a cracking All-Ireland final, I think. And I think, and I respect our own lads, I respect Limerick, but I have to say that Galway will win it by 3 or 4.
Okay, so I figured we might get Limerick, and I figured we might get Galway. You're the honest broker in this conversation. Everything weighed up. I mean, we haven't even touched on half the things to weigh up here.
Yeah, but in our own time, we all weigh them up. We're driving around during the day, we're weighing it up. I was Galway from the start of the year. I thought they were brilliant All-Ireland champions. I didn't think they'd win the previous couple that they were in. I didn't think they were ready. I was certain they'd win it last year. I was pretty certain from the start of the year that there was no team could beat them. I thought they were complete. And last week I started to think more about Limerick, and I really started to come down on Limerick's side. And then I suppose you look at it and say, well, why am I coming on Limerick's side? A lot of people who have an opinion on the game of hurling were for Galway at the start of the year, and a lot of them are changing their mind. And I suppose when you say, why are they changing their mind? And a lot of it has been put down to because Clare asked so many questions and showed up so many potential weaknesses. And then I started to think, but Clare dissected Limerick, and there's nobody discussing that game.
Yeah.
And yet Galway came back and didn't lose them. And to me, a key moment was 2 points down in extra time, and the way they answered them back with a lot of players on the bench. And I thought, that's resilience, because Clare are very good. People are making the mistake of Clare showed them up as if Clare aren't up to Galway's league. Clare are a very good side, and Clare will have a lot of regrets. I like everybody, certainly we'd love to see Limerick winning All-Ireland, and Pete, and I think everyone will understand why neutrals would like to see it. But I think Galway are brilliant All-Ireland champions, and I think if they are brilliant All-Ireland champions, they will win back-to-back. And from what I've seen for them over the last 2 years, I think they have the ability to do it on Sunday when it really counts. But I think it'll be an extraordinary game, because we know Limerick are just going to die rather than lose this game. But someone has to, and I do fancy Galway.
Okay. And actually, a very last point to finish on. Pete says he thinks it's going to be a cracking All-Ireland final. It would be a travesty for this All-Ireland championship of any if we don't get an absolute humdinger on Sunday. I mean, I presume we'll get one. Hurling just is in an unbelievable place at the moment.
Well, people who love the game would often say, you know, I was at a Junior B game last night. What a cracking game of hurling. By nature of the game, it's very seldom you get a very bad game. It's very seldom. When you add 80,000 people, when you factor in, it's not as if Galway have won 20 All-Ireland finals. This means so much to Galway. And to win back-to-back, I think only 2 counties, ourselves included, you know, we failed to put back-to-back. So, like, there's a lot of motivation for Galway, and nobody needs to question Limerick's motivation. I mean, as a sporting county, they're an extraordinary county. So all of those tend to bring it out of players, which means we will get a feast.
Yeah, hopefully. Listen, you're staying on, and actually Siobhan's tweeted in, fair play to Dahi, playing a blinder, interviewing Pete and Ollie Moore and asking questions I'd never even think of, but I'm dying to hear the answer to. Mighty, says Siobhan. And Des in Christchurch says, Ollie's got me heading down to the stream right now. Hopefully a dip in the Liffey is going to see me right. So there you go.
Good for him.
Yeah, Ollie, Pete, thanks a million for being here. Cheers, lads.
Round of applause for the 2 lads.
Good to see you.
We're here at
welcome back. You're all having a nice time? We're all good? We are here at the Guinness Open Great Brewery. We're here with Guinness Ireland and their Bound Together campaign, as you know by now, which celebrates the power of the GAA to unite and heroes the fans and their passionate commitment and connection to their local communities. We have chatted with Ollie Moran and Pete Finnerty, looking ahead to the final on Sunday. There is a football final on the horizon, so we're going to chat a little bit about that now. Can you welcome some All-Ireland winners to the stage? Barney Rock, top scorer in 3 championship years, All-Star winner of an All-Ireland in 83, and then the brilliant Enda McGinley as well, 3-time All-Ireland winner with Tyrone. Enda and Barney, everyone!
Nice to see you, Barney.
Barney, good man. Enda, good man. You're very welcome. How are we doing?
Not too bad, Joe.
Jeez, it's been tough for football, hasn't it?
Them hurlers, always still in our limelight.
I was looking there. Of the 21st century, we've never had higher scoring games in football. We're averaging 18 points, goals and points combined, 18 points a game. And yet the perception of football has never been lower. It's a mad one.
Yeah, I think it's because maybe the Super 8's coming in. Everybody was looking forward to the Super 8s and probably thinking that with the Super 8s it's going to really explode. And probably the first one, the GAA probably learned from it, because probably the 2 matches in Croke Park, the 2 weekends, probably didn't live up to the hype. The games weren't that particularly brilliant, even though they were great competitive games on paper.
Yeah.
I think maybe they look at it next year, they might turn around and play the home provincial winners. They'll play them at home first.
Yeah. Not to go on too negative a note, Enda. Obviously, you lads started this. We should, you like the blame.
Absolutely, Throne's fault. Everyone's Throne's fault. Even the rain that is probably Throne's fault.
Cynical play, terrible football, everything, verbals, all Tyrone. Yeah,
absolutely.
Just so we're clear. Do you enjoy watching football these days? Are you starting to wobble a little bit?
Yeah, I was a great believer in the evolution, that football was only going to go through an evolution from the great football actually in the noughties, let's be completely fair, to the zonal defensive stuff that's in now. I always believed it was going to be a phase, the teams were going to come out of it. I'm now beginning to worry that I think them tactics at the minute are so effective. There's no real impetus for evolution to occur further. They are so effective for the weaker teams coming against the stronger teams, or for Tyrone coming against Dublin. They still feel like the most effective. And Dublin, to an extent, are using it themselves. So I'd be beginning to think, we'll see how the final pans out, but I don't think the final should really colour, even if the final turns out to be brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't think it should colour what has went before it, and whilst I think the format and the condensed nature has played a part in failure of people to really get into it, I personally think that the football hasn't been exciting. When you see at an inter-county All-Ireland semi-final match in Croke Park, fellas walking with the ball, soloing with the ball, no pressure on them, fisting it at walking pace to each other, that's not the football that I know or that I love, and I think for the majority of supporters, they're not behind it either. I think
to the point where you'd advocate some kind of rule change?
Yeah, I think it's at that point. I think now the managers and the players that are playing at the minute will come out strongly against it, but they're never going in at half-time wondering, is that a good match or not? They're wondering, how can we stop scores? How can we get more scores? That's the only thing they're worried about and should be worried about. There's some commentators out there talk that teams should be worried about entertaining. I think that's rubbish.
Yeah.
Teams are there to win, full stop. So it's in their interest to pick the best tactics, and defensively, I think that's the way to go at the minute.
Do you enjoy football at the moment, watching it?
Well, I enjoy watching Dublin at the moment, yes. So we do enjoy football, and it has changed. Everything has evolved. And certainly from a point of view, it should be all about attacking football, but it's, as Enda says, it's more about possession football a little bit at the time. But I enjoy watching it because you're trying to see teams plotting of how you're going to get in behind the defence, or how you're going to get that goal opportunity, like the one that Dublin got last week against Galway. Like, there was a lot of phases there, and the ball went over the top, and it was great to see how they got the goal.
Yeah, no, we've no issues with Dublin, to be fair.
No. But the only thing from our point of view, the goal the other end. It was a fantastic old-style goal where the ball was kicked in, and Comer just got in front of the 3 Dublin people, including the goalkeeper, Clucko, and it was a fantastic goal. And we don't see enough of that ball being kicked in around the square for either somebody to win or somebody to break it into the goals.
One of the things I was interested in, actually, speaking of Dublin bear no responsibility, was the day they played Donegal, and the last 8 or 9 minutes, the way they played keep ball. And a lot of people were critical of Donegal not pushing up. But Donegal were trying to keep their shape, obviously where there was going to be a strike runner. But Dublin kept the ball for minute after minute after minute. And I remember watching the game thinking, I can't wait when it goes back to RTE to hear Joe Brolly. What's he going to say about what Dublin did? And I was actually really disappointed. I tweeted about it at the time. I was really disappointed because I thought, if that was Tyrone that did that, he'd have absolutely gone to town on Tyrone. And it does it great with Tyrone that you're, as you say, to be fair about it, I went to see all Tyrone's All-Ireland wins because of a great affection for what they did coming up in the noughties and the way they just went at the game and the way they changed it. I have a huge admiration for what they've did. Does it really great with you guys previously and with the guys now that, you know, it just seems to be ridiculed. Eamon Sweeney was the same on the weekend, like, I mean, ridiculed you.
I think the problem, and you see it across any part of society, particularly now with social media and everything that goes with it, messages get out and they become entrenched. People, even if they are trying to think smartly about it, if the same message is repeated and repeated and repeated, it gradually goes in. Right from the noughties and Pat Spillane, famous puke football comment, which if anybody ever watched that 03 game that he made, that it was an insane comment about that game. And for our football in the noughties, I'm sure coming up to the final, there'll be replays of the Tyrone Dublin games from 05 and the Tyrone Dublin game in 08.
Yeah.
Again, phenomenal football. And I'm from the same club as Mickey Hart, so he was over me as under 14. He was over me from I was 17, 18, 19, the whole way up. So I think I was counting coming down the road 17 years. I think I was in the dressing room with Mickey Hart. He never once suggested to be doing anything negative on the pitch. He was completely against that style of thing. So having been inside the circle, I know that it's not how it's presented. Outside the circle, absolutely right. That message is just over and over and over again. And even fair-minded people, you can't help, even the commentary, if you actually listen objectively to the commentary, it's just tainted. Anything Tyrone do is just tainted a wee bit. Like, I've seen Tyrone have sinned, absolutely, but no county team out there doesn't sin. Yes, some Tyrone boys buy frees. Every county team, Kieran Kilkenny's a master at buying frees. But as it ever pointed out, so the comments, there is truth to the comments. I think there's stuff going on. It's almost obligatory, it seems now, if a county player scores or if a county player misses a shot, his man comes out and straight into him, or a bit of verbals. But that's the uniform across every team. You never watch the Sunday game with any other game that's not happening.
Yeah, there's no choir boys anywhere.
But it's
really
only pinned on Tyrone, so that bit grates. But we'll not worry about it too much. We're in the final and we'll get on with it.
Yeah, I saw there was a bit of controversy within Tyrone during the week. Mickey Hart was talking about the levels of dedication from the team at the moment. He said, I've seen the dedicated athletes that they are, and I have to say, and I suppose this is to do with the times we live in, but they're definitely more committed Gaelic football athletes than some boys who've won All-Irelands in the past with us. That's not to be disparaging towards them. Monday clubs were a lot different to what they are now. Monday clubs are an extra training session now. In the past, it was a different kind of club. And Owen Mulligan was outraged. He said, totally insulted and let down by Mickey Hart's comments on commitment and the Monday clubs. We all have reputations to protect, so please stop making these false allegations. It was the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday club we went on. So where were you on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday club, Enda?
Unfortunately, in them years, I was living in Belfast, so I never got to join.
Okay.
But Mugsy, and it won't surprise anybody, Mugsy was on a different level, in fairness, and there was a group
Friday.
of that Tyrone team like that. But I had fully agree with Mickey. Like, there is obviously in Tyrone, and there's always talk about the Naughties team, and
which, by the way, I'm messing every time you come on the show and I slag them. It was like total football. Like, they're just one of the best teams I've ever seen or likely to see.
It's tough for the current team to be measured against that. It's along with that, and it's a different era, completely different football. But the level of them boys, and again, I would go back probably, it was Jim McGuinness's Donegal and Jim Gavin's Dublin, up the ante. And the level of training that them boys had to do, we never had to do it. Thankfully, we complained. Like, really, weight sessions, we got out given out the best of programs, and all the boys would chat. They were just they were done in the winter, but come summer, come championship time, them weight programs were put in a bag and never seen the light of day. Mickey constantly would have given out diaries for us to keep into the bag and never seen the light.
Right?
So Mickey would have had the best of intentions and all of it was there, but it wasn't necessary back then.
Okay.
Now it's necessary.
'Cause
Unless you're doing that work,
You work as a physio with
Yeah.
inter-county teams now, don't you? Or is it
no,
just
well,
one?
Yeah, I'd see some inter-county players, yeah, but
Okay,
I'm physio, yeah.
so you have a feel for how physically they've come on even in just 10 years?
Oh, it's massive. Their level of conditioning, it's sort of a nightmare. Whenever you speak to an inter-county player about an injury, they know more anatomy and they know more about their injury than you know, if you know what I mean. They're coming out with terms left, right. So they are so clued in to their bodies. But again, that's just another facet. They're clued into their bodies, they're clued into their diet. So the game has went on to another. And I suppose going back to the first question about the quality of football, the quality of footballers now and athletes is massive. And the Armagh Roscommon game, which was that was two teams trained to the level of modern athletes and went toe-to-toe, and it was phenomenal. The speed and the skill on show, and I just think we're not seeing that all the time from the teams.
By the way, streams are very effective. If you want to send players down to streams, we've heard great things about them this evening. Just a little tip for you.
Barney, it's actually an interesting question because the Dublin team of 94, 95, we paralleled with them. We played in successive All-Irelands, and so did Dublin. And Fran Ryder, as you remember, was part of the management team, and he was the physical coach. And the morning after we lost to Clare in 95, we were in the Burlington Monday morning club. And Fran was there, and I was chatting to him because when I was at Fogs, I used to drink in his pub. And we used to be fascinated looking at Dublin then. They did their warm-up way different than everybody else. They all wore the tracksuit tops, and they all took off in twos in different directions. And the legs always seemed to be browner and stronger than everybody else's. And we were fascinated with this Dublin team, and I remember talking to him that morning and saying to him, these must be the most incredible athletes. And he said, are you joking me? Some of them are the biggest crowd of headers we've ever dealt with. He said, the difficulty we have is trying to keep them, you know, as pumped and mind themselves and the whole thing. So like we were chatting earlier, guys aren't robots. At the end of the day, there must be a release valve after a game. And I'm sure Dublin now are no different, that there has to be characters there that...
And I'm sure there's loads of characters, you know, but certainly going back to the time you were talking about, I finished up in 91, so I would have been gone before that. But back in our day, back then, you would be able to go off. It was all knockout. Yes. So all of a sudden you might only play maybe 3 championship matches in the year, and in the Leinster final, when we'd normally get to Leinster to that stage, if you were bet by Offaly, that was the end of the year. So you'd be able to go off then for a week or two, and you know, you'd be all right before. Because back then we would have had our club championships played and finished by July. So once you're out with Dublin, you were gone. So,
but it's the fun then if Dublin are winning, and that brings a lot of things on the pitch and off the pitch, and players are entitled to it and everything they can get with it, if it's jobs or careers, they deserve every bit of it. But for the lesser teams that aren't, but are given the same level of commitment in their life, is the fun gone out of it for those guys, where there's bans on drink and what you can eat?
Well, all you can do is just look at the present day Dublin setup. You know, they must still have plenty of fun because, like, they're winning. And I always say that if you go out and you're playing football, you play with a smile and you try and bring that into your
But for the teams that aren't winning, Barney.
Yeah. Well, the teams that aren't winning,
you know,
it is very hard for them. You know,
but, well, on Carlow, you've seen their reaction to the promotion in the league. You know, it was absolutely massive. You've seen the reaction with the initial championship matches. So again, going back to the defensive football thing, and will things change? I think for teams like that, by setting up in that defensive style, they can reach a level of success, and it has a massive impact on the county. So, and when them players had that success, they were definitely enjoying themselves. Same with Fermanagh this year. Whenever they beat Monaghan, like the reaction of the crowd on the pitch. So I think if teams can get success, it's still, the GA still has an effect on that community like nothing else.
But you would still make changes to the game?
I would still make, it would sort of bring you towards a tiered thing, that them teams, they are putting in a huge effort. They need to have something to aim for and some success to get, and be able to get on a run and be able to be involved late summer and not go on early June. Because it still has that effect on a county. You've seen it in Carlow, Laois to a certain extent, Fermanagh definitely. You've seen it this year. Buzzing.
I'm going to nip in and steer this away from a championship restructuring conversation before we all want to lose the will. So if for the week that's in it, or I guess we're heading towards the All-Ireland final, I know we've asked you about this before on the show a couple of years ago, but it is just the most extraordinary thing. Like, you think of Bert Troutman in the 56 FA Cup final breaking his neck in goals. Enda McGinley breaks his neck in an All-Ireland final and manages to play on. Which final was that?
03.
03. So it's your first one. It's the biggest game of your life. When in the game did you get the neck injury?
20-something minutes in. Okay. Yeah, I was sprinting out sprinting out, flat out that way. The ball was just at reach, so I was having the arms out full to try and get it. John McEntee, not a small fella, was sprinting full speed this way, and just as I got the ball from here to here, he met me full on, and essentially we just sort of, our heads whiplashed together. At the time on the pitch, the neck was the least of my worries. I literally couldn't breathe. The wind was knocked out of me, and the two of us were down on the ground. I've never looked back. I think it was for a number of minutes, like 3-4 minutes, the two of us were on the ground, struggling to get up. Canavan came over into my ear, and Armagh at that time were the big, strong team. They were the first to wear the tight jerseys. This was part of their persona.
Yeah.
And we were quite a young team. I was 22. We were all sort of 22, 23 from the minor team that had come up. And Canavan, obviously one of the older boys, was in my ear. McEntee was down over here. I was down here. He was just saying, "You're getting up before him. Get up before him." And I was like, I sort of swore I was playing, or I was fighting Ivan Drago in Rocky, and I was trying to climb up. But anyway, got the team docked on the squirt of water over my neck, and it was the first time in my life that actually worked. You took a big breath. So we got up on the feet, and I was grand, played on half time, searing headache, and coughing up blood and that. So we got a pain injection at half time. Played on the rest of the game.
Well, no, just hang on there a second. Do you say to anyone at half time, should I come off? I know, like, concussion protocol and
no,
you know,
again, I didn't know there was anything wrong. The searing headache, I presume that was just from the bang of heads. But again, it was the coughing up, the bits of blood was probably more concerning.
because you're saying you didn't know anything was wrong. I mean, I'll give you a clue. No. The coughing up blood would suggest there was something off.
Well, that night, we're at the banquet, first All Ireland, mood phenomenal, as you can imagine. I didn't really eat. Had difficulty swallowing, just wasn't feeling myself at all. Difficulty drinking, just went to bed early.
But there were still no clues anything was wrong at that stage?
No clues. Okay. I was qualified at the time, but there was no clues. So
how did you play in the second half?
I played well. It was actually one of my better performances of the year. So
and were you able to?
The best part on the Monday on the way home, stopping in every town on the way home as you do, we stopped in Monaghan, and I remember going to the team dock. And I still wasn't right, still headache, just difficulty swallowing, all the rest of it. I went to the team doc, and it says, "Doc, here, I'm still not right after yesterday." And I'll never forget, he turned to me, he had 2 waters, I presume, in his hand, but he turned to me and he says, "Right, come to me a wee bit later on about that end, will you?" So that was it. So I know it wasn't until I went back to work in the hospital on Wednesday, and they sent me down to A&E, and
you get an X-ray.
X-ray, and the doctor looked way too long at my neck on the X-ray. So.
And so it was actually broken, was it?
No, it was the top bone, or the second top bone, C2, which is pretty important. It's a peg, and it had shifted to one side, which if it shifts too far,
bad things happen.
Bad things happen.
Yeah,
paralysis. So it shifted.
Paralysis, I would think, if it goes too far. Yeah.
It's that high up that no, you're gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I was put into a neck collar or a brace for cast basically around my head for 6 weeks.
Were you able to turn your neck in the game during the game? And
yeah.
Right.
Sore the next day.
And the day after.
Yeah. And so you were physical. You were if someone had shouldered you, if you'd fallen the wrong way in that half, potentially.
Yeah, potentially, but I play it on. It never. You can't sort of fix that type of thing, so you just hope it stiffens up enough. And I played on for 10, 12 years until I hurt it again in a club match, and that was...
Right. Did you get up before the other fella?
I did.
Okay, that's the most important.
That's whenever you have Canavan roaring in your ear, you sort of respond to that.
Probably tough when Peter Canavan says, "Get the hell up."
Yeah. Absolutely.
What made that team so special? Because they were amazing, 3 All-Irelands, a very competitive time of football.
Yeah. It was right from we were 16, 17, we came through together, and there was a bunch of boys, you had Cormac McAnallen, God rest him, you had Kevin Hughes, Brian McGuigan, Stephen O'Neill, Owen Mulligan, Philly Jordan, Conor Gorman, who's the same age, Ryan Mellon, you'd all of us coming through at the same time, and Mickey was there, and he, right from we were 17, 18, he was planting the seeds of not just minor glory, but senior.
Was he? Yeah.
He was planting the seeds about senior glory, senior wins, and they were there the whole time. The schools had great success, which I think is massive. So we had vocational All-Ireland titles and Hogan All-Ireland titles at that stage through the schools. And all of them, we all came through as winners, won the minor All-Ireland 98, funny enough, 10 years, 08, we won the Senior Ireland for the third time, and this is now 20 years later, we're in the senior final. But so 98 won the minor title, won the under-21s in 2000, 2001, and then came through with Mickey onto the seniors 02, 03. And we always assumed, because we were used to it, we always assumed we were good enough to beat anybody in Ireland. There was no reason why we wouldn't be winning All-Ireland, and I think that's critical, that level of belief, which we just had because of the youth success. It was critical, and Mickey just put that into us. There was never a doubt that whenever we were playing Kerry or Dublin, you were supposed to be winning them games.
Yeah, it was an amazing period, obviously. I presume lots of people saw, there was a photo in the paper, I just showed it to Dahi before we came on air, a couple of, I'd say it was maybe last September, where they'd like split-screened Dean Rock and Barney Rock both taking a free kick. Have people seen that? Yeah. An amazing, like obviously you've seen it, I'm sure. What was striking about it was just how similar the action was. The same level of tilt, the head in the same position, the fists kind of half clenched. I mean, he didn't lick it off a stone.
No, he has more hair, but that's the only thing. So his head. But listen, Dean, although free taking has changed since my time, there was an awful lot of everything off on our day was off the ground.
Yeah.
Whereas in his day, he probably kicked most of the frees out of his hands. And then it was only probably when he got to 18 or that he started kicking a lot more off the ground. So, it was just different. But it was ironic when you seen the picture.
Yeah, it's striking.
That it was, yeah. So we seemed to strike the ball the same way.
Yeah, I was looking back. He did an interview in 2008 in the Irish Times. I think you were in it as well. And he says, "I don't want to be known as the son of Barney Rock." I mean, he's on the right track at this stage. It's remarkable what he's doing.
Yeah, well, it's changed because now I'm known as Dean Rock's father, so it's totally different. But listen, he's worked very, very hard, for everything he's got.
Yeah.
He got a bad injury in a hamstring and it knocked him out in 2010, 2011, and it took him nearly 12 months to get it back in. And he worked with the club, and since 2013, he's been very, very good both with the club and with Dublin.
Yeah. I was reading, this is 2 years ago he said this, so maybe it's changed, maybe it hasn't, but they were asking about his practice, and he said twice a week he'll go through his own practice away from the group, and he'd kick over 100 balls each time. You were the top point scorer for 3 years in the 80s, and taking the frees, obviously, and had to be deadly with them. What kind of practice would you have been doing in the 80s on your own?
Well, I was probably lucky at one stage because when I was young coming up, I played soccer and I played in goals. And I always used this from the goalkeeper's point of view. I'd put the ball down, I'd be able to kick. So I was using me kicking from if the ball went wide or whatever, I'd be using that as a bit of practice. Right. And then with the catching of the ball coming across from a corner kick, I'd be still using that as catching. So the kicking just developed for me. And back in them days, you were playing with a college, St. Kevin's College, and we were successful at that stage. So we had a brother, and after school, you'd go up and you'd probably, for a half an hour or so, you'd practice kicking. And it was just all practice at that stage. Yeah. And even with Dublin, you'd go down, you'd probably practice a half an hour before training, and you'd stay back a half an hour after. So you probably could have been practicing back then. Probably maybe about 70 or 80 kicks a night. Yeah. But it was just routine.
What you had to do, yeah.
There was a time, Barney, a few years back with him, where on a lot of occasions, he gets subbed towards the end of a game. And over the last couple of years, he's become a real leader. You just know he's going to be there at the finish, and you know he's absolutely fundamental to be there at the finish as well. Is that something that consciously he, and maybe discussed with yourself as to what extra 5 to 10% do I need to do to make sure that I'm considered by Jim and the management team to be top dog here? Because that's what he's grown into now, certainly the last couple of years, to be nearly the main man up there, not just from frees, but from play as well.
Well, I think it's just that he's grown into it. He probably took over from the frees from Cluxon, having to come out to take the ball from 50 yards, and he's developed into that, and they have gone well for him. But he knows himself that you're only as good as your last game, and there's always somebody else there. So he's worked very, very hard on what he has done.
Has he any allergies or any worrying traits?
Whatever he has, whatever he has, and he won't be looking advice off you after that neck problem.
Would you get as a dad-son, it's a unique relationship, particularly with what you both have achieved. Do you counter when you're chatting with him? Do you kind of say to yourself, right, I'll leave a certain thing now, I'll leave him to his own devices? You know, is it an instinctive thing as a dad to be able to distance yourself from what I'd like to be able to ask him as a sportsman?
Yeah, I think really we distance ourselves a little bit. He might come and ask for advice, but we never go along, and I'd never say, listen, you should be kicking this way or that. If he asked, I would maybe say something, but he's got his own people in there doing his training drills. He's practiced very, very hard on it, and you know, thankfully he's been very successful with his kicks.
Yeah, he sure has. This Dublin team, going for 4 in a row, like it's a slice of immortality, and frankly, I don't think anyone's writing off 5 in a row either.
Yeah.
Are they pretty much the best you've seen? I know that's a difficult question to ask. I know you were part of a brilliant team as well, but they are doing something pretty special right now.
They're doing something very special. I think the game has changed a certain bit, and they're leading that, and that it is becoming so controlled and so precise. I think the game back, both my time and before, was to a certain extent more off the cuff, which left more things to chance.
Yeah.
Now, increasingly, things are. It's the thought of chance is removed. It's everything has to be high percentage, and because of that, with their level, and to be fair, I don't think there's another great team at the minute. I think there's other good teams, but I don't think there's another great team at the minute. I think the Kerry team in the noughties would have done potentially 5 in a row if we hadn't have been about. But with both the championship structure, which changed with the backdoor system, I suppose we wouldn't have achieved what we had either back then. But Dublin are without doubt, their record speaks for themselves. They're probably the furthest ahead of their contemporaries than any other team in the past, maybe would be how I would put it.
Yeah.
And it would take a strong man to bet against them doing 5 in a row.
Yeah, I suppose it's impossible and unfair to compare eras, but that's a great way of putting it. Nobody's really been this far ahead of the pack, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both in so many ways around them, in the depth of their squad, in their ability as footballers, but not only that, I think the way they handle themselves, particularly as a Dublin team, which was always Dublin's Achilles heel for me. Like the team we come up against, the Noughties, was a good team, but they always got sucked into the Dublin hype, and we love to see that coming. Like as the country boys coming down the road, you wanted to see the city boys going up and applauding the hill. That was just, we rubbed our hands at that. The current team, they are so disciplined, they are so driven, they are so focused as men, as personalities. None of them's getting carried away, and that's phenomenal. Like Jim Gavin and them boys take a huge amount of credit for that, but that's probably the biggest change in them.
Sorry, Di, I know you wanted to come in. I was looking at balls.ie today, who just threw up Dublin's second 15. So if they wanted, they could go with Evan Comerford in goal, who we got a glimpse of this year, Davy Byrne, Michael Fitzsimons, we'll put him in, Eric Lowndes in the full back line, Conor Mullally, Sean McMahon, Darren Daly, the half back line, a midfield of Paul Flynn and Michael Darragh Macaulay, half forward line of Diarmuid Connolly, Kevin McManaman, Cormac Costello, a full forward line of Colin Bascal, Paddy Andrews, Bernard Brogan, and frankly, Owen O'Gara is going to be pissed off. He's in the third team. Hard to compete with that.
Thankfully, it's still 15 aside.
Yeah. That's what gives Tyrone a chance. How hopeful are you?
We're suspending logic for 3 weeks up north, and we are dreaming the dream. Anything is possible in one-off match. These are young players from Tyrone. A lot of them were in that under-21 All-Ireland in 2015. They haven't played on an occasion like this. That'll go one of two ways. They'll either crack or they'll rise. I think under Mickey Hart's management, they'll rise to that. And
why? What will he do?
Mickey Hart's preparation for an All-Ireland final means, for me, all bets are off. Like, I look at the game rationally, and it's only one outcome, and it's not a nice outcome.
Yeah.
You break it, you slice it and dice it every which way, and it only is one way. But whenever I know Mickey, and so I doubt every conclusion I come to, because the Mickey Hart factor, preparing that team for an Ireland final, it is phenomenal. So Tyrone, I think, will play above themselves. The problem is, even in playing above themselves, Dublin still needs to be a bit off colour for Tyrone to have a chance. But look, stranger things have happened. We'll hope.
So you think Mickey's peak of his powers, like,
an All-Ireland final, like, I mean, when I was watching them players celebrate on the Croke Park pitch after beating Monaghan, it was just coming back to me what's ahead of them for the next 3 weeks. Just the buzz and the anticipation of an All-Ireland final, but heart, like, I mean, them three.
Any examples? Because
I was trying to think, because I knew that was the one thing I would be wanting to say, but I was trying to think, what was it about it? But them three pre-match meetings the night before the All-Ireland final, and I remember in 03 went back to the room and there had been wee things passed into every player's room. we envelopes with bits and pieces about yourself from all the other teammates and stuff like that. Just wee things, but
So as in, Mickey had got teammates to write things about other teammates.
yeah,
And
everyone.
so-
So you'd sat down, you'd write, say you'd take a player, say Conor Gormley, and you'd write what you wanted about Conor Gormley. You went through the panel like that, and then Mickey took them, Michaela actually, cut them all up, put them in the envelopes, and then into the rooms. But the meetings themselves were just perfect, and I mean, you left them bulletproof. It was nailed on, 100%. We were winning the All Ireland. It was done and dusted, and then the wee things in the room, and
What kind of stuff had people written about you? I know that's quite personal.
I can't remember.
But can you
It's
remember?
obviously all positive. They're not going to slack you off.
Yeah.
It was all. It is a fairly loaded question when you're asked to write a teammate before an All-Ireland final.
Has a
but-
weak neck, suspect. Anything can happen.
Absolutely. Shouldn't be on me
yeah.
instead.
But can you remember how you felt?
Oh, as we say, just bulletproof. You just felt this is a done deal. We're going out tomorrow to make history, and it's going to be brilliant making that history. But I think it was all through the year. Like I had bet my life on it from last year's semi-final when they got hammered by Dublin. Mickey would have went home, and within the week he would have been 100% sure he was winning the All-Ireland this year. And that wasn't a facade on Mickey's behalf. That's a deep-seated belief.
Because my perception on the outside was he's going to be under big pressure in the county. He's been there a long time. I mean, the manner of the defeat to Dublin, you could have easily painted a picture, look, the game's passed him by kind of thing. He's been there too long. You need to freshen it up. Goodbye.
He thrives in that. He just thrives in that. And so he would have been planting them seeds all year. And the boys been normal fellas. Mickey's mentality isn't normal, but all the other players are normal fellas. They're going to have their own doubts. But he would have been planting the seeds all year. And as the year progresses, they buy into it more and more and more. And now winning the All-Ireland semi-final, coming into the final, they'll just be growing into it. So I'm really hopeful that we'll see, because I don't think we've seen the best of this Tyrone team. I think most of our forwards haven't hit full form consistently yet. So there's all them big questions, and yet, having been there, I sense that there is a performance in them. But that performance still mightn't be good enough. But I just hope that the boys do what they can do on the All-Ireland final day, and I believe they will.
Right, okay.
Just a question on that, and really interesting to listen to the way and the mindset of Mickey Hart. But if you were to bring it a stage further, and let's just suggest that things don't go well for Tyrone, and if they're on the end of a bad beating, okay?
Yeah.
With this mindset and this self-belief that Mickey has, and his belief that he'll imbue into his players, that they can't lose this game. If it goes that badly wrong in the All-Ireland final, is Mickey Hart the type of individual that you know then that will look in the mirror and say, right, I've done all I can, I now can do no more?
No.
Okay.
No. He'll not.
Is he right or is he wrong then?
He can argue all you want. I think there's a natural sentiment in everybody. Whenever something's not working, there's a natural sentiment, well, let's change something. And you can't change your players in Gaelic. We can't buy in players. So there's an automatic thing to change the management. And that is consistently there in Tyrone because he's been there for so long. But Mickey Hart himself will not, that'll not come into his mind. He'll still look at them players. He'll still believe in where he's going with them. He'll believe he can tweak it. Like last year's All-Ireland semi-final is exactly the scenario you talked about. It was built up to be this massive game, and it was a car crash.
Yeah.
Everything that went wrong could go wrong. But he immediately felt, right, let's move on. He lost his biggest player, Sean Kavanagh, from that game, and yet he will be fully confident. I think the way he's talking is very interesting after the Monaghan game. He talked about, even though there would be plenty of these critics within the county, his biggest thing after that Monaghan game was talking about playing for the county. The people of the county needed this. So I think that's a wee clue where psychologically he's taken the team, that they are now representing the county. It was a strong theme during our time. They're representing the county, lift the county, play for the county, play for all these people. And that's a man that has been criticised by his own, and that's what he's coming out with. He didn't come out with, proved you wrong, plenty of people doubted me. Now we're back in the Ireland final.
Is that lift the county thing, and maybe it's just because the day that's in it, like it's been a very poignant day for obvious reasons, was that to do with the troubles and all the horrible scar tissue there as well? Is that what he was talking about? He was saying give a lift. Was that ever talked about?
I think during our time like that, the 98 minor team that we were a part of, we were on a team day whenever the Oma bomb went off actually, and we were in St. Kieran's School. It's one of them things you never forget it, and that was Mickey Hart's team, and half the boys would have been from that side of the county, so all of their families could have been in Oma that day. And I remember we'd had maybe 3-4 hours together at that stage with the All-Ireland semi-final coming up, and then that happens. But so yeah, it was massive. But I think Mickey seemed to be hinting at just more personal things, and Mickey, because of who he is and what he is, he's involved in a lot of families. A lot of people would turn to him, and I think he's just aware of a lot of other things going on. And he senses, he has seen before the lift and like the GA, the Bound Together campaign that Guinness is doing. It is that sense that the GA can be more than what the team is, and that's a county team. People slag off county football, but county, it's so big that it lifts a whole people. So Tyrone's going to be enjoying that build up to the final in the 3 weeks, and as I say, we're putting off the fear of what Dublin could do to you. Absolutely, that is a potential. But for me, maybe the worst has happened. That nightmare scenario happened last year.
Yeah.
Life goes on. So I don't think the Tyrone boys will overly fear that.
Yeah, funny, on his future or not wanting to go, somebody, a Tom Inoma actually, is wondering about how good is Peter. You mentioned Peter Canavan, and he's saying, like, the word in the county seems to be that Peter Canavan's young fella is an unbelievable prospect. Now, enough pressure being Peter Canavan's son without us talking about him too much in the radio, but what age is he, or what's the word on Canavan Jr.? What's his name?
Minor manager this year for the club. So
oh, you're his minor manager?
So is Dara. Great fella. He'll not enjoy any chat about him, so I'm doing him a disservice by even chatting about him. Yeah, he's phenomenally talented, but he's young, and there is that weight of pressure on his shoulders. But in terms of talent and attitude, he's a phenomenal fella to work with.
He's a forward, I presume.
He's a forward. He moves a wee bit like that photo. Whenever you mentioned the photo about Dean and Barney, whenever people go to see Dara, Peter had quite a unique way of moving. His acceleration, his balance, his ability to weave was really unique, and Dara shows them attribute. And any people going, even neutrals that don't know, they just look and think, hang on a second.
Is that right?
That's some. So he is a special talent. But Tyrone have a lot of, like, being I was club minor manager of the year, and you've seen throughout the county there is serious talent there. And
so Mickey's going to know that's coming through.
Mickey's going to know that's coming through. Absolutely. They won the under-17 All-Ireland last year, so there's a really healthy bunch of boys. Dara's one of them, but there's a lot of other really good, healthy talent, very driven to achieve the top. So Mickey knows that there is really talented footballers there to come through, and I would imagine he's every intention of working with them.
Would you? Yeah, because Brian McGuigan was on the show Monday, and he half reckoned if Tyrone won, Mickey might sail off into the sunset, top of the world. But I just can't imagine him going.
It's hard to imagine him going. He always wanted to do back-to-back, so he would be the sort of man that if he won one, he'd be thinking, right, I want to do back-to-back. So I don't know. He'll always be his own man. There'll be nobody really to make up his mind.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, just I think with Mickey Hart, in all fairness, people say the naughties. Like, Mickey actually saved the naughties in one sense, because if it wasn't for Tyrone, Kerry could have went on to do 5-6 in a row, because that was a tremendous Kerry team, and they were the ones that were the backbone to stop that Kerry team, repeating what the Kerry team did in the 70s and 80s. So.
Is it a possible risk? And I know everybody's got to look at Dublin and look at it forensically and say, where could Tyrone win? And there was an interesting comment on, I don't know, was it Keys or Sweeney had a piece on it, and they were talking about what Donegal did to Mayo a number of years ago, that it wasn't down to Jim McGuinness's genius. A lot of it was down to Mayo shooting themselves in the foot. And I thought, did you not see Donegal against Dublin a couple of years previous, and even the year previous to that, where McGuinness didn't care if he won 3 points to 1. And when he went out against Dublin in that famous semi-final a few years ago, when Donegal won, literally Dublin were within a point in the first half, kicking on so far into the sunset. And Donegal got their foothold, and then the game plan kicked in with the runners getting beyond the kick out, etc. And Dublin weren't able to answer it. If there was any fear with Dublin, Barney, is it a case that we're so used to them leading from the front and kicking the whole way on, that if things don't go right from the start and Tyrone come at them with a fury, that maybe they can't contend? Is there any concern that maybe Dublin, is it just a case of empty the bench, or tactically on the pitch, is Jim that good that we maybe just don't know, because he never gets asked these questions about his tactical nous? But in that game, he arguably was found out.
Yeah, well, that game learned, and they haven't been beaten since. I think that's the one thing, so you would have to say that Dublin learned at that stage. Going forward, any team can be beaten. As Jim said, if you don't perform on the day, you're leaving yourself open, and that's the one motto I think with the Dublin team. They all know that they have to go out. There's 15 to start, and there's another 6 lads that have to come on, so they're thinking of a 21-man game and not just a 16-man game. And so from that point of view, Dublin would be streamrolled. They have the experience of being there, but they also know that they're one kick away from losing everything. So they will be really going into the game, and as a team, I think that's the most important thing for them.
It's probably difficult to kind of ask you, well then, if there is a weakness there that can be exploited, maybe in that you might have a view as well, because I agree with you. There is no team on a given day that can't be beaten, however unlikely it may appear. But yet, you look at what did happen on that day with a manager who had an incredible belief in himself and his players that they could do it. And you kind of get the feeling that Mickey Hart does have that same thing as McGuinness, and that his players will have the same thing. And not necessarily every other team that plays Dublin has that core inner belief that they actually can do it. This Dublin team seem to be very much in the mould of Jim Gavin, aren't they? That nothing seems to faze him.
Yeah, I'd say even Dublin back in Jim's day, Dublin back in the 90s, they actually got to 3 or 4 All-Irelands, and they were beaten, and it was only one game against Tyrone that they won.
Down Donegal.
Yeah, and after that then it just took off, and Derry beat them in the semi-final, so Dublin got on this run. So Jim knows what it's like to be beaten in semi-finals, and what it's like on the Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday club afterwards, these days. So he knows the hurt on that end of it, and I'm sure he's bringing that into it, into his own development of his own team.
Well, it's striking looking at them. This is kind of it for them. Like, what they're about now is 5 in a row, and you can't say that. But everybody, you've got to be fair to you. But what this team are about now is 5 in a row and maybe more. And like there's a reason Bernard Brogan, when he's just had twins and he does his cruciate, does everything he can to get back and be a part of this squad. You wouldn't do that for any other county. It's because they're fighting for history here. They're only fighting themselves at this stage, Enda, realistically. Although I do see that Gary Haughey, who's listening, says, after listening to Enda McGinley and that off the ball, his insight into the preparations for the final makes me now confident Tyrone are winning this. So
I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to create hope.
Hope.
That's what
Bit of hope.
You just have.
Yeah. So I guess we're at the final predictions point of view. You're going for Dublin, I presume.
Yeah, naturally,
Yeah.
I would think Dublin just shade it.
Just shade it. Honestly, just.
Yeah, listen, that's all you have to do is win by 1 point.
And I'd put it to you, I think the spread is about 6 or 7 points. Is that can you see Tyrone even beating the spread? Is it going to be closer than that?
I think the outcome is 1-1. It's either a really, really tight game or it's a heavy defeat again. Dublin can beat you heavily without you even realise you're getting beat. It's
Just
sort
picking
of
off points like the last time.
It's just like being put to sleep with a lethal injection. Like you just drift off. You're playing, you think you're tight. The Galway was a fine example of it. You're there, you think you're tight, you're doing most things right. Next thing they're 2 in front, 4, 5. Before you know it, they're 10, and it's a hammering. Yet they just kill you so gently that you don't even realise you're getting killed. So it could happen that, and Tyrone chasing frantically, trying to get after the game. That's the challenge, I think. Absolutely, it's the fearlessness that Tyrone need to show. They need to go after it. But if they go after it, put Dublin on the back foot. If you're chasing or going hard at Dublin, they can hit you very hard on the counter-attack, and suddenly it's game over again. So I think all the smart money would be on a fairly comfortable Dublin win.
Yeah. Dahi, I don't suppose
But there's always a chance.
You don't want to disagree with that strongly, do you?
No, sure, you can't disagree. Logic, if you be pragmatic about it, everything points to a Dublin victory.
Yeah.
But I've said this to you before, and I've said it to a number of Dublin people this year, that the one county that, Dublin are so far ahead at the moment, to me as a neutral looking at it, the one county I'd want against them would be Tyrone, because to me they're the one county that will come down, will justifiably give Dublin the respect they deserve as All-Ireland champions, but not a millimetre more of respect will they give them more than that. They won't genuflect, and I think other teams have. Of course, it's most likely Dublin will win, but it's not improbable that Tyrone will win.
No, we look forward to it. My thanks to you all for being here. It's been very much appreciated. We have a brilliant evening at the Guinness Open Great Brewery, with thanks to Guinness and their Bound Together campaign. Thank you all so much for coming, and will you give our guests, Ollie Moore and Pete Finnerty, Barney Rock, Enda McGinley, a big round of applause, and of course Dahi Regan as well. And thanks to all of you for coming, very much appreciated. We are done here. Football show is on the way with Johnny and Dan back in studio, and stay tuned for that. Good luck.